Hey, boys and girls. I wish I would have noticed this earlier, but it seems to me like I've forgotten to teach you a rather important concept. It's four theories or political theories to help us understand um, while we study interest groups. So at the area on page 16 of your notebooks, we just recently talked about social movements and interest groups. We defined each. We talked about how they're different from one another. And we know that Occupy Wall Street is a social movement, and that an interest group um, like the Association of Realtors will work for lower taxes so that they can save money. Um, we need to understand that there is some interaction between government and interest groups. So write this down next, and this is rather long, as it says here. You'll probably fill up all of page 16 and go on to page 17. Pause the video as much as you need to get all the information that you need down. You will be expected to know all four theories, as it'll be important for your summatives. So start off with a title: Important Political Theories to Understand Regarding Government and Interest Group Interaction. All right, I know that's a lot. We'll start with theory number one. Theory one is pluralism. This is the idea that politics and decision making are located in the framework of our three branches of government. Okay? And this means that whether it's the judicial, executive, legislative branch, there's many areas where interest groups can get involved, right? We know that non-government groups, IGs, interest groups, they can use their resources to exert influence, whether it's voting or using money to influence campaigns. Okay, that's old news. Here's the keys to this theory. Number one, groups try to maximize their interests. We have big businesses. They try to keep the minimum wage low so that they can increase their profits. Number two, there are many lines of conflict. There is a bargaining process that constantly shifts the power to the favor of one group and then to the other. And that's all based on, in part, the resources that a group uses and has. Number three, there are many inequalities that exist, but they are fairly evened out over the population. This might be hard to see, but it is in fact true. This is why we have opposing interest groups working towards different things, why we have Democrats and Republicans, for example. Fourth, change is slow. This should make good sense. We have something called veto groups. These are groups of people that would work to oppose legislation that another group favors. Whereas Democrats would be in support of the $15 minimum wage, Republicans would be against it in general. Point number five in this, or key five in this theory, is plurality. Plurality. What does this mean? This means that there's a situation with open competition for electoral support, right? We have Republicans getting support from certain companies. We have Democrats getting support from certain companies. And it's good maybe that we have this because it ensures competition between the groups, okay? So that's point number one, and it is your longest point. On to point two. Point number two is something we'll call as hyperpluralism. Hyper means like a lot, right? So states that groups are so very strong that government is weakened. So the hyper part of it would be that there's so many groups and they're so powerful that government is actually weaker than it could be without them. Why might this be? This is because interest groups control policy and they prevent, that means they stop government action, right? We can see this in a very good example. Obergefell versus Hodges. I probably said that wrong. It's probably Obergefell versus Hodges in 2015. And before this Supreme Court decision making same-sex marriage legal in our country, there were many states that allowed it, such as California. Some states, like Wisconsin, offered civil unions, so they recognized marriage, but they didn't necessarily recognize it as fully as some other states. They legally did. And there were others, like the hyper-conservative states, maybe like Texas, Nebraska, that prohibited it. They didn't allow it. So hyperpluralism is theory number 2. It states that groups are super strong and they weaken government, right? Their control of policy, their preventing action, work against each other and make government less effective. Point number 3, elite theory. This says that America is dominated by a few top leaders, mainly the extremely wealthy. A great example would be the Koch brothers. These guys alone owned many, many industries: oil, chemical, energy, fiber, ranching, even Georgia Pacific, which you might know is a paper company connected to Wisconsin. They own all those. They have a net worth of $100 billion with a B, and they employ 120,000 people. That is more people than the Fox Valley has. That's pretty impressive. These people are extremely powerful because of all that they have. And the theory is that they can benefit from the policies that they force politicians to take stances on because of their extreme amount of money. I would jot this graph down, and this emphasizes the point of elitist theory, that the wealthy control most of government. 50% of all Congress members are millionaires. So what is it, 538 people? Half of them are millionaires. 7-digit figures, okay? If we looked at the rest of America, only 1% of the population is millionaires. So we see this great disparity, and we know by this here that it's pretty clear that members of Congress who run our government, our bureaucrats, they're extremely powerful and they control government. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. Our last theory, number 4, is disturbance theory. This is the idea in government involvement in interest groups that interest groups form to counteract the efforts of other groups, right? We can kind of see this. Again, we have Democrats and Republicans. We may have a third political party here in 2020. Will we? I don't know, but it's possible that we'll have a third political party as a result of those that still support Donald Trump and those that are still considered Republicans against Trump and Democrats. We never know. But there's definitely a disturbance in the force in government that you might argue is part of the process here, part of these theories that show an interaction between government and interest groups. You do not need to write this down, okay? But it's something to think about, is which theory or combination of these theories do you most believe shows the proper relationship between government and interest groups? Keep that on the back burner and be ready to answer that, possibly in an essay question at the end of the unit. All right, that's all I got for you. Please take a screenshot of your notebook now, page 16 and 17, and post it in your Core Plus lesson. Have a good day.